Avraham Wertenteil will lecture. It goes on through thick and thin, especially this year. Malachim coming Olim Yordim. Malachim, the angels going up and down. Nefesh Chaim, in order to give our remembrance to it, that the remembrance to the Neshama, the human being that comes, that descends to this earth, and eventually returns back, returns upward. Up and down. Descending and then returning. We have a present that's actually in Ma'aseh Bereishis. In Ma'aseh Bereishis, HaKodesh Baruch Hu goes and takes the waters and divides them to the upper waters and the lower waters. That was necessary. The upper waters becoming the spiritual plane, and the lower waters becoming the physical plane. But as in the latter, the lower waters also at some point also want to return to their source, to the Makar, the Malam. The Neshama coming down, the words that came down, the creation, they all want to turn back to the ultimate source of the soul, to the soul, to the source. Rabbi Klein brings a beautiful homily from Rabbi Yosef. The Malachim that went up to Shemayim, and they see the Mystikono of Yaakov Avinu. They come down and they see Yaakov lying at the foot of Haramiyah. The Malachim are confused. The Gemara in Chulin Tzaddik Beis. The Malachim, they go up and they see the form, the image of Yaakov up on high, and then they see Yaakov down below. And the Malachim are confused. Was the real Yaakov, please stand up? The Boshi Beg is a beautiful idea. He said, up in Shemayim, before Yaakov descended, they painted a profile of Yaakov. Yaakov, this is what is expected of you when you come down to the earth. The Malachim see the profile up in Shemayim, and he comes down to the earth, and you see the Yaakov up top matches the Yaakov below. He was designated for a certain mission when he came down, and he fulfilled that mission. He became what he was designated to become. I will say, every person, every individual, before they come into this world also, there's a makeup, a profile, a picture, a passport picture. A passport picture comes down before coming to the earth, and the passport picture says, this is what is expected of you when you come down. When a person leaves this world, that passport picture of what was expected of him is matched with how he looks when he leaves the world. And so on the day of the outside. Did you match up the way it was expected of you to produce as the picture on top? The picture on top matches the picture below. And that's, by Yaakov, there was a true match. As the Neshama, as the Malachim Yordim, so as the veins, the words were separated upwards and the lower waters. The lower waters, so the lower waters come, the upper waters are separated, the lower waters come down. The lower waters come down. They water the earth, this vein. They fructify the earth, and then they return. They've done their mission, and then they return. Olim Yordim. So does the Neshama. The Neshamas come down for a certain purpose, and it's what as the main, as the Malachim also eventually will return. But Hashem grants us the cause that we will fulfill our mission in life. I would like to start by Reuven Chaim, Klein, a tremendous expert in the Lashon HaKodesh. Thank you. Thank you, Neshama, Avraham Wertenteil, Sabbath Aliyah. Thank you, Reuven. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Rabbi Shloime. I don't know if I would be considered a tremendous expert, but at least I have some things to say. Thank you, Rabbi Shloime, for the introduction and for inviting me here tonight, and to Rabbi Stein and Rabbi Aschenberg for hosting this lecture. It should be Lila Nishmas, Rabbi Avraham Tzvi ben Betzalel Wertenteil. If anybody has any questions, so I think the best way to do it is to type your question into the chat, and if I see your question and I have what to say about it, so I'll try to address it while I'm talking. And if I don't have anything to say about it, so then I'll just ignore it. So don't think I'm just ignoring your question. It just means that I don't have anything to say, or I can't, squeeze it into what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's begin. March 30th, 1879. In Vienna, there was a monthly journal called Hashachar, and a man named Eliezer ben Yehuda wrote an article in this monthly journal called Hashachar, an article entitled A Serious Question. And Eliezer ben Yehuda writes in Hashachar that the continuation of the Jewish people depends on the establishment of a common homeland, language, and culture. So this is where Eliezer ben Yehuda puts out his thesis that in order for the Jewish people to continue to exist, they need to have a common homeland, language, and culture. Okay, that's Ben Yehuda's thesis, his theory that he puts forth in Hashachar on March 30th, 1879. About 20 years later, Theodor Herzl first wrote about having a Judenstaat, a Jewish state. And the way he envisioned it, German would be the spoken language. Others said Yiddish should be the spoken language of this Jewish state that would exist. And there was all kinds of interesting disputes about that. And as we all know, in the end, Ben Yehuda's theory wins out, and Hebrew, or at least a variation of it, came about to be the common language that united the Jews. So according to Ben Yehuda's vision, there would be a common homeland, language, and culture, and that language was Lashon HaKodesh, and that homeland is Eretz Yisrael. That was Ben Yehuda's vision, and that was his theory and his thesis. Now, the truth is that in reality, it seems that Ben Yehuda actually stumbled upon an element related to the esoteric underpinnings of reality of the world. That there's some sort of connection between the Jewish homeland and the Jewish language, a connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. On some level, Ben Yehuda intuited, or he realized, that there was this unbreakable bond between the land of Eretz Yisrael and the language of Lashon HaKodesh, of Hebrew. Now, as I'm sure you've realized, I'm not here to talk about Ben Yehuda. That's not the subject of our speech. And maybe, as Hashem, if we have more time, we can speak about him at the end of the lecture. What I'm trying to bring from this is that even somebody like Ben Yehuda can recognize that there's a connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. What I'm going to do over here in this speech, in this lecture, is first we're going to demonstrate and show through Sefer Bereshis and through other places in Chumash and in history that it's obvious that there is this connection, this strong connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. And then we're going to explain the deeper significance of that holy connection. And then we're going to also explain what this practically means to us. So what's the nafkamina? What comes out of all of this? Okay? We're going to speak about what I termed Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh. Right? Eretz HaKodesh is not just a party in the World Zionist Organization, but Eretz HaKodesh is a term used to describe Eretz Yisrael, the Holy Land. So let's start with Sefer Bereshis. So we're going to see this idea in multiple places, in multiple steps throughout Sefer Bereshis. There's a connection between Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz HaKodesh. The first place we see this is when it comes to Adam Rishon. Where do we see this with Adam Rishon? The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, Daf Lamed Ches, it says, Adam Rishon v'Lashon Arami Siper. Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic. The Gemara asserts that Adam Rishon, what language did Adam Rishon speak? Spoke Aramaic. How do we know this? So the Gemara brings a pasuk in Tehillim, which is ascribed to Adam Rishon, where it says, "V'li ma'yaku rayacha kel." And the different Mefarshim have different ways of understanding what's the proof text. How do we understand this proof text to tell us that Adam Rishon spoke Lashon Aramis? Is it from the Lashon of Rayacha, which is the Lashon of like Rayon or Ratzon, Rava in Aramaic is like Ratzon in Lashon HaKodesh. So is it from the word Rayacha Kel, or is it from the expression of Yakru, which Yakar is the Aramaic translation of the word Kavod? Yakar is also Lashon HaKodesh, but Yakar is also the Aramaic translation of Kavod. There's different ways of understanding the Gemara, but the upshot of that Gemara, Sanhedrin Daf Lamed Ches, is that Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic. Okay, fine. Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic. Now, Chazal tell us another point. Chazal tell us that actually Adam Rishon spoke Lashon HaKodesh. How do we know that? So Chazal and Bereishis Rabbah say that when Hashem first created Chava, so it says that Adam Rishon called her Isha. Why did he call her Isha? This Isha, this woman, was taken from man. Now, really what's happening here in the Torah is that the Torah is sort of making a pun. It's saying that the word for woman is Isha, and that word for woman is related to the word for man because woman came from man, because Chava was created from Adam Rishon, so the word for Isha comes from the word for Ish. Yeah, the Gemara, it's Chazal explaining that the Torah is really making sort of a pun. That Isha comes from Ish. Just like a woman comes from man, so the word Isha comes from the word Ish. Now, the Medrash says that Adam Rishon spoke Lashon HaKodesh, because this pun obviously doesn't work in any other language. For example, in Aramaic, the word for woman is Itza, right? And the word for man is Gavra. So how if Adam Rishon would have said it in Aramaic, it would have been if Adam Rishon would have said it in Aramaic, he would have said, because we're going to call her Itza because she was taken from Gavra. You lose the whole pun. You lose the whole point. And similarly, in other languages, if it was in, let's say, Latin, so the Latin word for male is masculus, and the Latin word for female is fomius. Right? So if it would have said, we're going to call her fomius because it comes from masculus. So there's no pun over there. There's no connection between the word for female and the word for male. Or if we were talking about it in Greek, you don't have this pun either, because in Greek it's the word for man is andro and the word for female is genie, right? Like androgynes or androgynous. Right? So from this, the Medrash assumes that it must be that Adam Rishon spoke Lashon HaKodesh. That's how we know that Adam Rishon spoke Lashon HaKodesh. From the fact that it says Kimi Ishlu Kochazayt. Okay. So we have, on the one hand, we have a Gemara in Tzachas Sanhedrin that says that Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic. And on the other hand, we have a Medrash Rabbah, a Bereishis Rabbah that says that Adam Rishon spoke Lashon HaKodesh. In my book on the history of Lashon HaKodesh, I devote the entire first chapter discussing this question. What language did Adam Rishon speak? Was it Aramaic, like the Gemara, or was it Lashon HaKodesh, like Bereishis Rabbah seems to say? Okay, this is a contradiction. It seems to be a contradiction between these two sources. And in my book, I bring about 7 or 8 different ways of resolving this contradiction of how to understand what Adam Rishon spoke. Was it Lashon HaKodesh or was it Aramaic? But tonight we're going to focus specifically on Rabbi Yonasan Eibish's answer. Somebody asked the obvious question from man and woman. Okay, Mr. Kurtz or Mrs. Kurtz, I don't know who asked it. But so the answer is, and I discussed this also in my book, that the English word woman is actually, if you look at the etymology of the English word woman in the Oxford Etymological Dictionary, so the English word woman actually comes from the Old English word withman, which is really related to the English word for wife. So the word woman is really is a modern English word, but the Old English word was really like with or wife. So so what I'm saying still stands. The word for female is not related to the word for male, at least in Old English. In modern English, they are related, but nobody has a havamina that Adam Rishon was speaking modern English. Okay, just to clarify that. So what's Rabbi Yonasan Eibish's approach? So this is a little bit mystical over here, but let's talk about it. Rabbi Yonasan Eibish contends that there's a difference between Adam Rishon before he ate from the Eitz Hadas Tevara and after Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas Tevara. It says that before Adam Rishon sinned with Eitz Hadas, he spoke Lashon HaKodesh. And after he sinned from eating from the Eitz Hadas, he spoke Aramaic. So he's saying both the Gemara that says he spoke Aramaic and the Medrash that says he spoke Lashon HaKodesh, they're both true. Just one's talking about before the sin, and one's talking about after the sin. Right? Very typical type of Gemara type answer. This is talking about this is talking about this, and there's no contradiction. Right? Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz adds to this idea, and he says, why should this be? Like, what's the difference between Lashon HaKodesh and Aramaic? Right? So he says like this: when you take the word for one, the number one, yeah. How do you say the number one in Lashon HaKodesh, and how do you say the number one in Aramaic? What's the difference? In Lashon HaKodesh, the word for one is echad, and in Aramaic, the word for one is chad. What's the difference between echad and chad? The difference is an aleph. Right? Echad and chad is the same thing. It's just the word in Lashon HaKodesh has an aleph, and the word in Aramaic does not have an aleph. Okay? Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz explains that the letter aleph, the number one, right? The letter aleph represents the number one, represents the concept of one, of unity, of there's only one option, there's only one choice, there's only one consideration. And that's the state of Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. Adam Rishon Kodem Achet is speaking Lashon HaKodesh, where the word for one is echad, with an aleph. Because Adam Rishon Kodem Achet, there's only one consideration. We only do Ratzon Hashem. We're only connected to Ratzon Hashem. There's no other consideration. There's no other element. There's nothing else exists. Just one. Just Ratzon Hashem. However, once Adam Rishon ate from the Eitz Hadas and he went against Ratzon Hashem, so he loses the aleph. Now he has to speak the language where the word for one does not have an aleph. It doesn't say achad anymore. Now he says chad because he lost the one. Now, by eating from the Eitz Hadas, he opened up the proverbial Pandora's box, and he created a situation where now there's a possibility of somebody going against the Ratzon Hashem. You have multiple options. There's no one option. I can listen to Hashem. I can not listen to Hashem. There's multiple options. So he loses the aleph of echad, and now he only speaks Aramaic, in which you have the word chad. That's Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz's first approach, reconciling this contradiction in sources, whether Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic or he spoke Lashon HaKodesh. And then Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz says another approach. And it's not really clear if this approach is really building on the first approach or it's an entirely new approach. But let's see what he says. Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz says that Lashon HaKodesh is the epitome of good. Lashon HaKodesh is just good. It's toiv. It's good. Lashon HaKodesh is good. Aramaic is not necessarily good. Aramaic is, according to many sources in Chazal, Aramaic is a corruption of Lashon HaKodesh. The Kuzari says this. The Rosh seems to say such a thing about why angels don't understand Aramaic because it's a corrupt language. So if Lashon HaKodesh is good, Aramaic is, let's say, a mixture of good and bad, right? So Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz also connects this to Adam Rishon Kodem Achet. Adam Rishon Kodem Achet was just toiv, and now Adam Rishon after the Chet he ate from the Eitz Hadas toiv v'ra. It's now good and bad together. Right? This also relates to what we were saying before. Before it was just toiv, which is Ratzon Hashem, and now after the Chet, it's a mixture of sometimes Ratzon Hashem, sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes yes, Ratzon Hashem, sometimes no Ratzon Hashem. A mixture of toiv v'ra. So that's toiv v'ra is a mixture. Right? So Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz says that Lashon HaKodesh is toiv, and you know what else is toiv? You know what else is toiv? Eretz Yisrael is toiv. Right? As Yeshua and Kalev famously said in Parashat Shlach, Toiva ha'aretz me'od ma'od. The land is very, very good. Eretz Yisrael is also toiv. So if Lashon HaKodesh is the linguistic epitome of good, Eretz Yisrael is the geographic epitome of good. So Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz says that when the Gemara says that Adam Rishon spoke Aramaic, that's when he wasn't in Eretz Yisrael. But when he was in Eretz Yisrael, he spoke Lashon HaKodesh. Okay? This is our point of departure. So Rabbi Yonis and Eibishitz says that when Adam Rishon was in Eretz Yisrael, he spoke Lashon HaKodesh. When he was outside Eretz Yisrael, he spoke Aramaic. This is our first source, which shows us that there's a connection between Aramaic, a connection between Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz HaKodesh, a connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. When did other missions speak Lashon HaKodesh? Only when he was in Eretz HaKodesh. When he was outside Eretz HaKodesh, he didn't speak Lashon HaKodesh. I don't know if this means, if this is the same thing as before and after the Chet. Maybe this is a different answer. This is the first, Rabbi Yonas's first answer was, before the Chet was Lashon HaKodesh, after the Chet is Aramaic. And now he's saying a different answer. That in Eretz Yisrael, Lashon HaKodesh, outside Eretz Yisrael, Aramaic. I don't know if these two answers jive together. I don't know. But this is what we see from Rabbi Yonas and Eibishitz, that there's a connection between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh. That's Parshas Bereishis. Moving on to Parshas Noach. We talk about Migdal Bavel. The story of Migdal Bavel was where the whole world united in order to rebel against Hashem. They built a big tower, and Hashem decided to destroy the tower, and he divided the world into multiple languages. He balkanized the global language into multiple languages. It fractured into multiple languages. He took all of mankind and he broke them up into 70 languages, 70 nations. Okay? Can you hear me? I got a message that my internet connection is unstable. So just give me a thumbs up if I'm okay. Thumbs up? Hello? Okay, I think I'm okay. Okay. It says Pirkei Eliezer in Pirkei Eliezer ties this to a passage in Shiras Hazinu. It says in Shiras Hazinu, "Anchel yoin goyim ba'afridei bnei Adam yatzev gvuleis amim l'mispar bnei Yisrael. Chelek Hashem amo Yaakov chevel nachal asay." When Hashem was divvying up the nations to bequeath them their inheritance, Anchel yoin goyim, when the upper one, Hashem, the Elyon, was giving out the inheritance to the nations, v'hafridei bnei Adam, when he was separating mankind, what did Hashem do? It says, Yatsev Gevulos Amim, he established the borders of the nations, l'mispar bnei Yisrael, according to the number of the children of Yisrael, the children of Yaakov Avinu, because it says, B'shivim nefesh yerdo v'secha Mitzrayma. Right? All Yisrael came, there were 70 members of Yaakov Avinu's family that came down to Mitzrayim. So the Mispar b'nei Yisrael is 70. When Hashem divvied up the nations of the world into 70 nations, and he divvied up the languages into 70 languages, the number 70 is the Mispar b'nei Yisrael. And then Shiras Hazinu continues, and it says, Chelek Hashem Amai Yaakov Chevel Nachal Asay. But the portion of Hashem is his nation Yaakov, Chevel Nachal Asay, right? That is the lot of his inheritance, of Hashem's inheritance. What this means, the Pirkei Eliezer says, Hashem took 70, let's call them guardian angels, 70 malachim, 70 sarim, and he appointed these 70 sarim and said, each of you is going to be in charge of a different nation and a different language. So by Migdal Bavel, you get 70 languages and 70 nations. But there's one place, there's one inheritance, one nation, one language that transcends this division. It's not included in the number 70. It's above the number 70. It answers directly to Hashem. Chelek Hashem Amai, Yaakov Chevel Nachal Asay, Bnei Yisrael. Right? Bnei Yisrael is above the 70 nations. We're not included in the number 70. Lashon HaKodesh is not included in the 70 languages. Eretz Yisrael is not included in the Yatsev Gevulos Amim l'mispar b'nei Yisrael. It's a separate thing. It transcends it. It goes above that division that Hashem created for the rest of humanity. All Yisrael is above that. Lashon HaKodesh, Bnei Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, they all answer directly to Hashem. We're all directly under Hashem's control. Like it says in Parshas Eikev, Eretz Yisrael is a special place where Hashem's eyes are always upon Eretz Yisrael. From the beginning of the year until the end of the year, Hashem is constantly watching Dafka Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is not under the dominion of these 70 Sarim, these 70 guardian angels that Hashem appointed over the different nations and the different languages. Eretz Yisrael is above that. Eretz Yisrael is higher than that. It's directly answering to Hashem. We, as a Hebrew national hot dog said, we answer to a higher authority, right? We say on Yontif, right? And we say on Yontif, "V'remamanu mikol Lashon." Hashem lifted us up above all languages, or "V'remamtanu mikol Lashonos." He lifted us up above from all the other languages. It's an interesting question. I never really saw anybody who discussed this, but if anyone has any interesting ideas, in Kiddush on Yom Tov, and in Shemona Esrei on Yom Tov, we say a slightly different nusach. We say "V'ramamanu mikol Lashon," or do we say "V'ramamtanu mikol Lashonos"? Are we referring to Hashem in second person, or are we referring to Hashem in third person? That's an interesting question. It's the same idea, but it's in a different part of speech, sort of. The point is that when HaKodesh Baruch Hu is mashpia to other nations and to other lands, so the Shefa doesn't go directly from Hashem straight to that nation or straight to that land. It goes through a hishtalshalus of various intermediaries. It sort of percolates through different ilamas until it gets to them. Kedushas Levi in Parshas Chayesara, I just saw, speaks about this, that when there's a hishtalshalus of Shefa, when there's a Shefa that percolates through different worlds, through different ilamas aliyanim, so inevitably that shefa is going to have to be metered. It's limited shefa. But when it comes directly from Hashem, it's infinite. Okay, so like that's a difference between Eretz Yisrael and all the other places in the world. Eretz Yisrael gets directly from Hashem. Eretz Yisrael is not considered one of the 70 countries. Lashon HaKodesh is also not one of the 70 languages. Marsha and Saita Daf Lamed Vav, the Tesis Rosh over there in Saita Daf Lamed Vav, they say that Lashon HaKodesh is not considered one of the 70 languages. When it says that Yosef learned 70 languages, it means Yosef knew 70 languages plus Lashon HaKodesh. Meaning altogether, Yosef HaTzadik learned 71 languages. Paro only knew 70 languages. But Yosef knew 71 languages. He knew all 70 languages plus the language that's above them all, or Lashon HaKodesh. So we see again in Parshas Noach, by Migdal Bavel, we see again this connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh, the connection between the geography and the language of the Jewish people in terms of Migdal Bavel. Okay, Mr. Reb Asher Kassel asked a question. We're going to get to this question to Ezra Hashem as we continue forward. So that's Parshas Gracious. We see about Adam Rishon that he spoke Lashon HaKodesh, Dafka in Eretz HaKodesh. We see about in Parshas Noach by Migdal Bavel that the Eretz HaKodesh and the Lashon HaKodesh transcend the division of 70. And we see it also in Parshas Lech Lecha. This is a very interesting point that not many people are aware of. In Parshas Lech Lecha, Avraham Avinu comes to Eretz Yisrael. Or more accurately, where does Avraham Avinu come to? He comes to Eretz Canaan. Who's living in the Holy Land? The Canaanites. The Canaanim are living in Eretz Yisrael. According to many Rishonim, what language did the Canaanim speak? According to many Rishonim, the Canaanim actually spoke what we call Lashon HaKodesh. They spoke the same language that Hebrew. They spoke Hebrew too. The Canaanites also spoke Hebrew. The Ramban says this in Parshas Vayigash on the pasuk of Kifia Medaber Aleichem, and the Mari Korah and Ibn Ezra. They say this in their respective perushim on Sefer Yeshaya. I don't want to get into all the details, but I speak about this in the 3rd chapter in my book. But many Rishonim understand that the Canaanim spoke Lashon HaKodesh. We also know this from archaeology. If you look at, we have archaeological, inscriptions, epigraphs from Canaanim, and it's more or less the same thing as Lashon HaKodesh. They might be using a different script than we use now, but the language, the letters, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Canaanite language and Lashon HaKodesh is the same language. We can more or less say that with pretty close certainty. So how do we understand this? The way to understand this is that Hashem, HaKodesh Baruch Hu, gave the Canaanim a sort of temporary custodianship over Eretz Yisrael and over Lashon HaKodesh until it came time for Bnei Yisrael to conquer Eretz Yisrael and for Bnei Yisrael to perpetuate Lashon HaKodesh. Right? There's a very interesting idea that I saw in one of the Sfarim from a Italian Rav named Rabbi Yoel ben Amazig. Rabbi Yoel ben Amazig, a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about him. Some people say he's a maskil, and some people say he was mamish mukubal. But Rabbi Yoel ben Amazig brings down in the name of some anonymous mukubalim, he says that the situation of Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh, that Hashem allowed the Canaanim to, conquer Eretz Yisrael and to speak Lashon HaKodesh, and they were the main purveyors of Lashon HaKodesh before the Jewish people came around. So Rabbi Yoel ben Amazig says that these anonymous Kabbalists compare the custodianship over Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz HaKodesh to the custodianship that Uriah HaChiti had over Bathsheba. Chazal tell us that Bathsheba, David HaMelech's wife, Bathsheba, the mother of Shloime Melech, she was Ru'uyah to be the wife of David HaMelech, Misheshis Bereshis. She was destined to be David HaMelech's wife, Misheshis Bereshis. From the creation of the world, she was destined to be David HaMelech's wife. So how did it end up that Bathsheba was Uriah HaChiti's wife, and then this whole ugly story had to happen? How did that end up happening? So the way these Mukubalim put it is that Hashem decided that it wasn't the right time yet for David HaMelech to marry Bathsheba, so that there will be a time for him to marry her, but not yet. And in the meantime, she's marrying Uriah HaChiti. And then when the right time comes, she's going to marry David HaMelech. So Rabbi Yoel ben Amazig says that that's the same thing with Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. Before Avraham Avinu got Eretz Yisrael, before Bnei Yisrael got Eretz Yisrael, it was Eretz Canaan. It belonged. Hashem gave it to the Canaanim. Hashem allowed the Canaanim to take over Eretz Yisrael, and they sort of had a temporary custodianship, where there was a pikadon, a deposit that Hashem gave them. Hold on to this land for me for a few generations until Bnei Yisrael is ready to take it. Hold on to this language for me. Hold on to Lashon HaKodesh until Avraham Avinu is going to come and his descendants are going to adopt the banner of Lashon HaKodesh and bring it out and perpetuate it for all generations. Okay, some people are asking, I see some questions over here, that did Eretz Canaan originally belong to the Canaanim, or did it belong to Bnei Shem? Because Canaan is from Chum. There's a machlokas about this, about in the original division of the lands, like beginning about Bnei Yisrael. This is before Bnei Yisrael, before Avraham Avinu. Did Eretz Yisrael belong to the Canaanim, or did it belong to the Bnei Shem? Because Vaknani Oz Ba'aretz, Rashi says that Vaknani Oz Ba'aretz means that the Canaanim were conquering it from Shem, so that sounds like really Eretz Yisrael belongs to Shem. It's an interesting discussion. There's a Rashi in Chumash, and there's a Rabbeinu Tam al Torah, which is a very interesting sefer if you haven't taken a look at it. But there's a but there's a lot of much of Zakina. I don't want to get into that discussion over here. So what we see from this discussion over here in Parshas Lech Lecha, Avraham Avinu comes to Eretz Yisrael, and the Canaanim own Eretz Yisrael, and the Canaanim are speaking Lashon HaKodesh. Again, we see that the Lashon, the land, and the language, they go together. Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz HaKodesh, they go together. Before Hashem gave it to Bnei Yisrael, Hashem gave it to the Canaanim. The Canaanim lived there. The Canaanim spoke this language, and then afterwards it came to Avraham Avinu. Afterwards it came to Bnei Yisrael. But again, we see that the language and the land go together. So we have, so far, if you're keeping tabs, we've seen this idea in Parshas Bereshis, by other mission. We've seen it in Parshas Noach, by Migdal Bavel. We've seen it in Parshas Lech Lecha, by the Canaanim, etc., etc., etc. Moving on, let's skip to this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, we talk about Yaakov Avinu and Lavan. There is a famous, we say in Parshas Kisavai, when you come to bring the Bikurim to Eretz Yisrael, so you say the famous psukim, Arami Oived Avi. An Aramean tried to destroy my father. Arami Oived Avi. We bring this pasuk in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, and we expound on this pasuk in a lot of different ways in the ensuing psukim as well. But what does it mean, Arami Oived Avi? So there's a lot of different explanations to Arami Oived Avi. One explanation is Arami Oived Avi is talking about Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was an Arami Oived. He was a a lost Aramean. Avraham Avinu came from the area known as Aram, and he was a misplaced person from Aram. So that's talking about Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu is a Arami Oive. That's one explanation. Another explanation is Arami is talking about Lavan HaArami from the Parsha. Right? Lavan HaArami is Arami, the Aramite, Lavan, Oive Avi. He tried to destroy our father. Who did he try to destroy? He tried to destroy Yaakov Avinu. He tried to destroy Klal Yisrael. The most famous explanation is that by giving Leah before Rachel, so he made it that Yosef wouldn't be the firstborn, and then the brothers would be jealous of it, and then the whole Hishtalshtalos Dvarim, the whole continuation of the story ended up that's what led the Jews to going down to Egypt. But in the history that we speak about, when we bring the Bikurim, we say Rabbi Avid Oyavi, Vayered Mitzrayma, Vayagor Shamba Mesei Ma'at, Vayishom L'Gai Gadol, etc. We connect this Arami Avid Avi to Vayered Mitzrayma, going down to Mitzrayim. Arami Avid Avi is connected to going down to Mitzrayim. As I said, if you understand that it's talking about Lavan trying to destroy Yaakov Avinu, so it has to do with Yosef not being the firstborn, and then the brothers being jealous and selling him, and that's how Israel ended up going down to Mitzrayim. There is a very interesting explanation to Arami Ovid Avi that's brought down in the Sefer Chanukah Torah in the name of the Rebbe Rabbi Shloime Wertenteil. Rabbi Shloime Wertenteil was one of the Achronim who lived during Gzeres Taftat in the early 1600s. He was the Rebbe of the Shach. Rabbi Shloime Wertenteil is a very interesting idea. He understands Arami Ovid Avi in a very original way. Arami Ovid Avi. Arami, he translates as the Aramaic language, Ovid Avi. It destroyed our forefather. Vayered Mitzrayma, and then he went down to Mitzrayim. He went down to Egypt because of that. What does that mean? The Aramaic language caused destruction to Yaakov Avinu. How did the Aramaic language destroy Yaakov Avinu? So he explains that in the end of this week's parsha, we find that Yaakov Avinu runs away from Lavan's house with his whole family, his whole entourage. And then Lavan chases after him. And Lavan says, "Why did you run away? We should make peace. We're brothers. We should be friendly." So what happens in the end is that Yaakov Avinu and Lavan sign a peace treaty. They sign a peace treaty together, and they erect a monument to this peace treaty that they signed together. It says in the Torah that Lavan called that place Yigar Sahadusa. Yigar Sahadusa in Aramaic means a mound. Yigar is like a mound. Sahadusa, like we have in the Gemara, Sahadi is witnesses. So it's a witness mound. This monument is a witness mound that testifies to the peace between Yaakov and Lavan. Okay, that's what the Torah says. And Lavan called the name of this place Yigar Sahadusa, an Aramaic term which means a witness mound. And then the Torah says, Yaakov Avinu, he called it Gal Eid. Yaakov Avinu called that same place, that same site, Yaakov Avinu called Gal Eid, a heap of a witness. Gal in Hebrew is a heap of rocks or a mound, and Eid is a witness. So Yaakov Avinu called it Gal Eid in Hebrew. Lavan called the same place, he called it in Aramaic Yigar Sahadusa. Comes along the Rebbe of Heschel, Mikraka, and he explains. Arami Ovid Avi means that the fact that Yaakov Avinu made peace with Lavan, that caused Aramaic to be brought into the Torah, and because of that, Yaakov Avinu was punished. Arami Ovid Avi, the Aramaic language caused my forefather to be lost by Vayered Mitzrayma, and he had to go into Golus, into Mitzrayim. Okay? The way the Rebbe of Heschel Mikraka explains it is that bringing Aramaic into the Torah was the catalyst or the reason for Golus Mitzrayim. That's what caused Beit Yisrael to have to go into exile into Egypt, because Yaakov Avinu brought Aramaic into the Torah. Okay, Arami Ovid Avi Vayered Mitzrayim. That's how he understands it. Now, actually, it's interesting that the Rebbe of Heschel, when he brings this idea, he brings it in the name of a sefer, Kabbalistic sefer called Galia Razia, which is attributed to the Rekech. But Rabbi Mordechai Koster from Lakewood, in his edition of the Chanukah Torah, Rabbi Mordechai Koster wrote a sefer called Gvuras Akiva. In his edition of Chanukah Torah, he points out that the Galia Razia itself doesn't really quite say it exactly the way the Rebbe Heschel says it. But we don't have to attribute this to the Galia Razia. We can say this is the Rebbe Heschel's part. That because Yaakov Avinu brought Aramaic into the Torah, that's what caused Golus Mitzrayim. Now, my question is like this. What's the connection between bringing Aramaic into the Torah and Golus Mitzrayim? Like, what's the Midah Keneged Midah? Why does Aramaic cause you to go into Golus, into Mitzrayim? I don't understand. But based on what we're talking about, we have a very good answer to this. Because there's a connection between Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz HaKodesh. In whatever bechina, in whatever way Yaakov Avinu sort of rejected Lashon HaKodesh or caused some sort of slight in the honor or covet of Lashon HaKodesh, because of that, he lost Eretz Yisrael, temporarily at least. Because he had a rejection of Lashon HaKodesh, he loses Eretz HaKodesh. He loses Eretz HaKodesh, and he has to go into Golus, into Mitzrayim, and then they'll come back, and then they'll get their Eretz Yisrael, and then they'll get their Lashon HaKodesh and everything all together. Okay? So again, in this week's parsha, we see a connection also between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh. We'll also find another idea. This is relevant to next week's parsha. There's a medrash there that I didn't understand it, but based on what we're saying, we can have some sort of semblance of an understanding of what's going on in the medrash. Next week's parsha, we find, Yaakov Avinu, he leaves Lavan, he's coming to Eretz Yisrael, he comes to Eretz Yisrael, and his wife Rachel is giving birth to a child, Mazel Tov, except that right as she's giving birth, she dies. Right? But it says that this child that's born, she names him Ben Oni, the son of my affliction, right? Like Onain, a person is afflicted, right? Aninus. So she names him Ben Oni, but Aviv Karale Binyamin. But Yaakov Avinu calls him Binyamin. Now the name that Yaakov Avinu gave this child sticks. His name is Binyamin. We call him Binyamin. We don't call him Ben Oni. Why did Yaakov Avinu's name stick and Rachel's name did not stick to this child? So the Medrash says that the reason is because the name that Yaakov Avinu gave him is Lashon HaKodesh. The name that Rachel gave him is Aramaic. Ad kan divrei Medrash. I don't understand this Medrash. Why is Ben Oni less Lashon HaKodesh than Ben Yamin? Ben Oni is like Aninus, sadness, sorrow. And Ben Yamin is also Lashon HaKodesh, son of the right. Why is Ben Yamin more Lashon HaKodesh and Ben Oni is less Lashon HaKodesh? And that's why Ben Yamin sticks and Ben Oni doesn't stick. Well, what's the difference between the two names? I don't understand this Medrash, and I really don't understand this Medrash. I have different ideas floating around that maybe because I talk about in my book that there's a chazal that says that Aramaic is a language that's fitting for keynotes, for elegies. It's fitting for sadness. We don't want to go with the Ben Oni, which is sadness, which represents Aramaic. So we'll go with Binyamin, which is Lashon HaKodesh, vis-a-vis the Ben Oni of Aramaic. That's one approach. It's half baked. It's not well thought out. Another sort of half baked approach is based on a medrash called Sefer Yosher. Sefer Yosher says that why did Yaakov Avinu call his youngest son Binyamin? Because of all of Yaakov Avinu's sons, only this son was born in Eretz Yisrael. All his other sons were not born in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? And where is this alluded to in the name Binyamin? So Ben Yamin. Yamin in small would mean left and right. Correct? Yes. Right. Yes. Right. Exactly. Right. Ben, Yamin and small mean left and right. But Yamin and small in the Torah also are directions. Yamin is right. It means south. And small means north. Okay. How is this figured? So if you orient yourself, by the way, the word orient means east. You face eastwards. You orient yourself, kadima, forward or eastward. You look forward or eastward. On your right-hand side, this is my right-hand side, but for you it's my left. But on your right-hand side is the south, and on your left-hand side is the north, right? If you're facing eastwards, on the right is south, and on the left is north, right? So when Yaakov Avinu calls Binyamin Ben Yamin, the son of Yamin, this is an allusion to the fact that Binyamin was born in Eretz Yisrael. Binyamin was born in Eretz Yisrael. It was in the land of Yamin, which is south. Eretz Yisrael is south of Aram. And all of Yaakov Avinu's other children were born in Aram, in the north. But Binyamin was born in the south. Then Yamin. Yamin, we have it in the different directions. We have Yama, Tzafoina, Temana, right? So Teman and Yamin is also, Teman is south, Yamin is also south. Orient yourself. There's also actually a very interesting idea that the directions, the words for directions in Lashon HaKodesh come from the perspective of Eretz Yisrael. They come from the perspective of Eretz Yisrael. Like Negev means south. Why is Negev south? Because Negev means dry. Lenegev, right? Lenegev etayadayim leyabesh, right? And the south geographic area of Eretz Yisrael, the topography there is dry, right? Yam means west. Why does Yam mean west? Because west of Eretz Yisrael is a Yam, is a sea. Right? Safoin, some people want to say that Safoin means north because there's a mountain called Har Safon, north of Eretz Yisrael in Lebanon. Mizrach means like Zrichat HaShemesh, the sun shining, which applies everywhere. But all the other terms for directions are sort of using Eretz Yisrael as reference points. The Lashon HaKodesh uses Eretz Yisrael as a reference point. But my point is that Binyamin is called Benyamin because he was born in Eretz Yisrael. And the Medrash says this by saying that the term Binyamin is Lashon HaKodesh. Why is Binyamin more Lashon HaKodesh than Benoni? I think that given this connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh, when it says the name Binyamin is Lashon HaKodesh, it means that the name Binyamin alludes to something related to Lashon HaKodesh. It alludes to the fact that Binyamin was born in Eretz HaKodesh. He's the Ben HaYamin. He was born in the land of the Yamin, as opposed to Yaakov Avinu's other children, which were born north. Yamin meaning south. So I'll show you guys something really cool. I'll do some screen sharing for a second here. If you look at this map, how do I share my screen? Second. Rega. Forgot how to do it.
There should be a green arrow that says share screen at the bottom.
Here, share screen. Okay, here's a map. Okay, if you look at the map, there's a place called Gulf of Aden. Yeah. Now, if you look at the Gulf of Aden, you have there's two countries that border the Gulf of Aden. There's a country called Somalia and a country called Yemen. Yeah. Yemen and Somalia. Does that ring a bell? Sounds like Yemen and small. You don't see it? Oh, 1 second. Here. Now you see it, yeah? Now you see it? Give me a thumbs up, somebody. Okay, there. You have Yemen and Yemen and Somalia, right? Yemen, if you're traveling in the Gulf of Aden, if you're going, let's say, northwards, so, I'm sorry, if you're going southwards in the Gulf of Aden, so you're going to have Yemen on your right, and you're going to have Somalia on your left. Yemen and small. Is this a coincidence? I think not. What is the significance of this? I have no clue. Some people will tell you that it has to do with the fact that Arabic is related to Lashon HaKodesh, but I just thought this is a really cool thing, so I like showing it to people. Anyways, again, the point is that we see that there's a connection between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh. We see that there's a connection between Eretz Yisrael and the Holy Language. Okay. Another place where we see this, there's a lot of different points that I wanted to make, but I really want to get to the point of like, what's the point of all of this? I'm not just trying to bring out connections, but there's a lesson to be learned. But just two more examples where we see this playing out. connection between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh one is in Parsha Shmais, when Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he saves Yisro's daughters from the other shepherds. So they come home early, and Yisro asks them, why did you come home early? And they said, Ish Mitzri Hitzilan Miyad Arayim. An Egyptian man saved us from the shepherds. Right? So they called Moshe Rabbeinu an Egyptian man. Why did they call Moshe Rabbeinu an Egyptian man? Did Moshe Rabbeinu, did he look Egyptian? Rashi says in Parshas Lech Lecha that the Egyptians were black. Does that mean that Moshe Rabbeinu was black? I know some people might be uncomfortable with that, but is that the implication over here? I don't know. Did he dress Egyptian? What made Yisro's daughters think that Moshe Rabbeinu was an Ish Mitzri? The Farshim say that what happened was that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to them in Lashon Mitzris. Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Yisro's daughters in the Egyptian language. I mean, Chazal tell us that Yisro himself used to be one of Pharaoh's advisors, so maybe his daughters grew up in Egypt, so like they understood Egyptian language or something like that. But the point is that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to them in Egyptian. He did not speak to Yisro's daughters in Lashon HaKodesh. Okay, that's what a lot of the Rishonim say. Some Rishonim take this a step further. Okay, this is Rabbeinu Chaim Paltiel, who was one of the Talmidim of the Marami Rutenberg, Moshe Zekanim, which is a compendium of the Bali Yafesis on Chumash. They ask a very interesting question. They ask the question like this: what is the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yosef HaTzadik? Why is it that Moshe Rabbeinu was not buried in Eretz Yisrael, and Yosef HaTzadik ended up getting buried in Eretz Yisrael? What's the difference between the two? He was a tzaddik. He was a tzaddik. So why did Moshe Rabbeinu, he was not zeicha to kvura in Eretz Yisrael, and Yosef HaTzadik, he was zeicha to kvura in Eretz Yisrael? So Rabbeinu Chaim Paltiel and the Moshe Zekanim answer that the difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yosef HaTzadik was that Moshe Rabbeinu did not speak Lashon HaKodesh to Yisro's daughters, and he allowed them to make the mistake to think that he's an Ish Mitzri, while Yosef HaTzadik made it very clear from the onset that he's a Nar Ivri. He spoke Lashon HaKodesh. He kept up with the Lashon HaKodesh. He was a Nar Ivri. Everyone knew him as a Nar Ivri. No one could have mistaken Yosef HaTzadik for an Egyptian. So the Rishonim said that that's why Yosef HaTzadik, he kept the Lashon HaKodesh. He was zeichet to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. He was zeichet to kvur in Eretz Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, who spoke to Bnei Yisrael in Egyptian, he was not zeichet to kvur in Eretz Yisrael. That's what the Rishonim say. Now, of course, we don't really quite understand what the Rishonim are saying and what the criticism against Moshe Rabbeinu exactly is. We don't understand any of these things. Moshe Rabbeinu was on a level that we can't understand. We can only understand a little bit. There was some sort of aina against them for not using Lashon HaKodesh instead he used Lashon Mitzvahs. So that's why he wasn't buried in Eretz Yisrael. But what we do see from this source is that there's a connection between speaking Dafka Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz Yisrael. You speak Lashon HaKodesh, you're zeicha to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. You don't keep the Lashon HaKodesh, you're not zeicha to be kvura in Eretz Yisrael. And we find a lot of historically this connection between Lashon HaKodesh and Eretz Yisrael Mamish plays out that by Churban Bayis Rishon, when Beit Mikdash was destroyed by Golus Bavel, so people forgot Lashon HaKodesh. They forgot Lashon HaKodesh. It says that during Golus Bavel, the 70 years of Golus Bavel, people forgot Lashon HaKodesh. And the Nehemiah says that when the people came back for Bayis Sheni, so half the people that were coming back, they were speaking Ashdoides. They didn't speak Lashon HaKodesh at all. They didn't understand Lashon HaKodesh. They were disconnected from Lashon HaKodesh. So we see that we see that Klal Yisrael's dominion over Eretz Yisrael during the Bayis Sheni period wasn't as strong as it was in the first Bayis period. They were at the mercy of the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. They didn't have such a strong yishuv of Eretz Yisrael. They weren't as in control. And in the same way, they didn't have Lashon HaKodesh in the same way that they used to have Lashon HaKodesh. They had a sort of watered down version of Lashon HaKodesh during the Bayis Sheni. It was influenced by Aramaic, by Greek, in the times of the Mishnah and the whole Bayis Sheni. It wasn't the same Lashon HaKodesh. So when you don't have Eretz Yisrael, you don't have Lashon HaKodesh also. The two go hand in hand. Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh, they go hand in hand. So the question is like this. So what's the common denominator between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh? What unites them? What's the tzad hashava between these two? What's the connection? So the connection seems to be the concept of holiness, of kedusha. There's Eretz HaKodesh, Lashon HaKodesh. There's this concept of sacredness, of holiness, of kedusha. What is kedusha? Kedusha is something we talk about all the time. We talk about this is Kaddish, it's not Kaddish. Well, what is exactly Kaddish? How do you define Kedusha? So I saw an interesting book by Rabbi Alec Goldstein from Kodesh Press. He wrote a book called Theology of Holiness. He talks about he tries to define the idea of Kedusha sort of from a linguistic perspective, from a philosophical perspective. He goes a lot of all kinds of different ideas. What's relevant to our discussion is that the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim says that the idea of Kedusha is equal to keeping the mitzvahs. Kedusha equals mitzvahs. Kedusha equals following Ratzon Hashem. That's what the idea of Kedusha is. In specific, I have two Rashis. To talk about. There's Rashi in Parashas Mishpatim on the pasuk of V'anshe Kodesh tihiu li. The Torah tells us you have to be men of Kedusha, holy men. Rashi in Parashas Mishpatim says, what does it mean to be holy men? It means to not eat shkotzim or masim, nevelas, and shefes. Kedusha means, and specifically, besides meaning all of the mitzvahs, but more specifically, it means the mitzvahs of what you eat. Rashi in Parashas Kedoshim says on the pasuk of Kedoshim Tihu, the kol makom shatam mitzvah geder arayas sham timtza kedusha. Wherever you find a fence that protects people from stumbling in the sins of a sexual nature, that's where you find Kedusha. So Rashi connects Kedusha specifically with the mitzvahs of arayas and the mitzvahs of verbal mitzvahs and mitzvahs of the bris. The bris milah and the bris hama'or, right? The Sefer Yetzirah, without getting too much into it, the Sefer Yetzirah talks about how the bris halashon is mechuvan connected the bris hama'or, the fleshy covenant and the tongue covenant are intertwined. Okay, that's a Sefer Yetzirah that I don't want to get into, but this is the idea of Kedusha. The idea of Kedusha is keeping the mitzvahs, specifically Bris Halashon and Bris Milah. Interestingly, even though the Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim seems to say that Kedusha is like all the mitzvahs, but the Rambam in the Yad HaChazaka seems to go like Rashi. The Rambam in the Yad HaChazaka has a sefer called Sefer Kedusha, in the Book of Holiness. What's this Book of Holiness? That's where the Rambam talks about Hilchos, Macholas Asuras, Hilchos Shchita, and Hilchos Isurei Bia. Right? These are the three topics that the Rambam talks about in Sefer Kedusha. Right? All things that have to do with the Bris Halashon and the Bris Hama'or, the fleshy bris and the bris of the tongue, of the verbal bris. Okay, the Ramban famously says that Kedusha is not just keeping the mitzvahs, but it's going even above what the Torah expects of us. It's even novel Bershus Torah is also against the mitzvah Kedeshim Tihiu. But the tzad hashava, the upshot of what we're saying is that Kedusha is commensurate with following the Torah, with keeping the mitzvahs and following the Torah and continuing with Ratzon Hashem. That's the idea of Kedusha. Now the Ramban in Parshas Kedoshim, in the end of Parshas Kedoshim, when the Torah at the end is talking about arayas, we read it on Yom Kippur in the afternoon, and by Mincha, the Torah warns us that don't violate the Isurei arayas, because if you violate the Isurei arayas, then Bataki Eretz is just like Eretz Yisrael kicked out the Canaanim, because the Canaanim did Isurei arayas and Avodah Zarah, and they didn't follow Ratzon Hashem, and they did Averas, Eretz Yisrael is going to do the same thing. The Ramban in Parshas Kedoshim says that this is related to the holiness of Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is such a holy place that it can't tolerate Tumah. It can't tolerate somebody that's going against Kedusha. It can't tolerate somebody who's not following the Ratzon Hashem, who's not following the mitzvahs. Eretz Yisrael it'll just Bataki Eretz Yisrael. It's going to just spit people out. People who can't maintain Kedusha, Eretz Yisrael spits them out. It gets rid of them. It's like a natural thing. Eretz Yisrael is the Eretz HaKodesh. Its inhabitants have to be Anshe Kodesh. You have to be holy people in order to live in Eretz Yisrael. If you're not holy people, Eretz Yisrael is just going to kick you out. That's what the Ramban in Parshas Kodesh. I'm summarizing the Ramban. I'm not really doing justice to it, but if you have to really look at this Ramban, it can change your life. If you go through it slowly, very slowly, read word line by line what exactly the Ramban is saying. There's so much to learn from what the Ramban is saying over there. That's in terms of Eretz Yisrael. Now, in terms of Lashon HaKodesh, we find the same thing. Why is the Hebrew language called Lashon HaKodesh? So, why is it called Lashon HaKodesh? The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim says that Lashon HaKodesh is called Lashon HaKodesh because it doesn't have bad words in it. Lashon HaKodesh doesn't have bad words. It doesn't have words that allude to lewd things. It doesn't have bad words in Lashon HaKodesh. That's why it's called Lashon HaKodesh. The Ramban in Parshas Kisisa says no. Why is it called Lashon HaKodesh? The Ramban on the words Shekel HaKodesh, the Ramban says it's called Lashon HaKodesh because that was the language that Hashem used to speak to the Nevi'im. He said if it's like the Rambam that doesn't have bad words, why is it called Lashon HaKodesh? It should be called Lashon Naki, Lashon Tahor. But the answer to that question, the Ramban asks on the Rambam, the answer to that question, why is it called Lashon HaKodesh if it doesn't have bad words, is based on what we said before from Rashi. Rashi says that every time you have a Geder Arayas, then that's where you have Kedusha. And Rabbi Shem Tov, one of the commentaries on the Moreh Nevuchim, says this, that because Lashon HaKodesh has a Geder Arayas, it doesn't have bad words, it doesn't have words that allude to Arayas and to other lewd things. Therefore, the Hebrew language is going to be called Lashon HaKodesh. It's Kodesh because it doesn't have, it helps distance people from Arayas. The Chatam Sefer even says in Parshas Vayigash that a person who is nichshal in Arayas, a person who's nichshal in sins of a sexual nature, is going to lose his ability to speak Lashon HaKodesh. And that when Yosef was trying to prove his identity and trying to prove his purity to his brothers, he says, Kifi hamedaber aleichem, my mouth is speaking to you. Obviously, his mouth is speaking to you. But some says it means he's speaking Lashon HaKodesh. He's showing his brothers, look, I'm still speaking Lashon HaKodesh. It means I was not nichshal in Arayas like you think I was. Right? So just like Eretz Yisrael cannot tolerate a lapse in Kedusha, Lashon HaKodesh can also not tolerate a lapse in Kedusha. Okay? And that's part of the significance of the connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. I'm getting the signal that I have to stop, but I still have like 20 more minutes of stuff to say. So what do you want me to do? Well, I should stop? I can't hear you. Yehuda, can you unmute him?
Carry on. Carry on.
Should you carry on?
I would like you to, yeah.
Okay.
Ian Bider from London.
Definitely, unless you have a particular time frame you have to stop in, do continue.
No, somebody's giving me this signal like this. That means that I'm supposed to stop, no? Yes? No? Okay.
Carry on.
Carry on. I'm carrying on. Be'ezus Hashem. So the connection between Eretz HaKodesh and Lashon HaKodesh is not just about insensitivity. It's not just about, oh, Lashon HaKodesh cannot tolerate a lapse in Kedusha and Eretz HaKodesh cannot tolerate a lapse in Kedusha. It's more than that, and we're going to see how it's more than that. The Zohar in Parshas Noach says that when the people were building Migdal Bavel, they specifically spoke in Lashon HaKodesh. And them speaking Lashon HaKodesh is what gave them the special powers, the special supernatural powers to be able to complete their nefarious project. Lashon HaKodesh, it's a powerful tool. Lashon HaKodesh is a powerful tool whether it's used for good or for bad. Lashon HaKodesh is a powerful tool. It has ability to bring a person above nature, to do things that a normal person cannot do. And so in order to circumvent the goals of the people that were building Migdal Bavel, Hashem said, okay, bam, you forget Lashon HaKodesh. Make you forget Lashon HaKodesh. Destroy the tower, forget Lashon HaKodesh, and now you won't have the power to rebel against Hashem. But if they were speaking Lashon HaKodesh, they would be able to accomplish things that ordinary people cannot accomplish. Now, there's the powerful, with great power comes great responsibility. Somebody once said that. With great power comes great responsibility. If anybody knows who said that. Anyways, the Shemer Emunim, the Rabbi Arla Roth from the Yerushalmi group, the Shemer Emunim, not the Shemer Emunim, Rabbi Emmanuel Chayriki, not that Shemer Emunim, but the Shemer Emunim, the more recent one from Yerushalayim, and the Satmar Rebbe. They want to bring from this that Lashon HaKodesh is such a powerful tool that, for good and for bad, for better or for worse, when a person uses Lashon HaKodesh for evil, for sins, nivul peh, Lashon hara, mechara from a God, that's blasphemy, these type of things, kfira, when a person does averas in Lashon HaKodesh, it's much worse than when a person does an avera in a different language. The avera is magnified, it becomes bigger. It's more serious. It's a more serious thing when it's done in Lashon HaKodesh, because Lashon HaKodesh has a stronger ability to create realities in the world. It has a stronger ability to create. I saw a tshuva from Rav Sternbach. Rav Sternbach was asked, is it better for a person to speak in English or in Lashon HaKodesh? So Rav Sternbach said, it doesn't really matter what language you speak. The linguistic form, the surah, is not as important as the chaymer, as the content of what you speak. If a person is going to realize that Lashon HaKodesh is a holy language and he's going to speak accordingly, he's going to use it for holy purposes and not speak in forbidden ways, nivul peh and Lashon hara and forbidden speech, then it would be, of course, it would be better for a person to speak in Lashon HaKodesh. But if a person is going to speak inappropriately or even sinfully, then it would be better for him not to say those words in Lashon HaKodesh. It would be better to speak a different language, not Lashon HaKodesh. Speak English, speak Swahili, I don't care what you speak. Just don't use Lashon HaKodesh for evil purposes. Right? So this is the idea of Lashon HaKodesh. It magnifies what you say. It's the focus on what you say, and it becomes more serious. We find the same thing with Eretz Yisrael. Ramban famously asks, how could it be that Yaakov Avinu married two sisters? He married two sisters. It's also to marry two sisters. Arayas. It's mamish arayas. Isha al-chisa le'sikach litzor legalis arbasa aleha b'chayeha. Mamish arayas. So how could Yaakov Avinu marry two sisters? So the Ramban famously says that Yaakov Avinu married two sisters outside of Eretz Yisrael. But Eretz Yisrael is the main place for Kiyum HaMitzvahs, at least before Matan Torah, when you can break it down in that way. Once we were Kabbalah the Torah, we signed the contract with Hashem that we're going to keep the mitzvahs. It doesn't matter where we are, we have to keep the mitzvahs. But before Matan Torah, you could say that Eretz Yisrael, that's the main place for the mitzvahs. Because whatever you do in Eretz Yisrael is magnified. A sin in Eretz Yisrael is magnified. Right? A mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael is magnified. Right? Just like a sin or a mitzvah in Lashon HaKodesh is magnified, a sin or a mitzvah in Eretz Yisrael is magnified. So when he was outside Eretz Yisrael, it's not such a big deal for Yaakov Avinu to have married two sisters. But once he came to Eretz Yisrael, then he wasn't going to be married to two sisters anymore. And not long after Yaakov Avinu came to Eretz Yisrael, so Rachel died, and he was only married to one sister. Except if you learn that Bill and Zilpah were also sisters, but that complicates things, and we don't want to get into that discussion. But that's the Ramban. So the Ramban is also saying that Eretz Yisrael is just like Lashon HaKodesh. It also magnifies what you do. It makes it, it makes higher stakes across the board. When you're in Eretz Yisrael, when you're speaking with Lashon HaKodesh, everything is more meaningful in a cosmic sense. And that's the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. The kedusha is that everything is more important and everything is more meaningful, and Hashem is looking exactly at you. It's a very, very interesting idea that we have to sort of internalize this. It's easy to pay lip service to this idea and say, okay, so we have to be Kodesh and we have to keep mitzvahs when we're at the soul and Lashon HaKodesh. It's very easy to just talk about it. But I think that part of this lesson is that it's not just to talk about it, but you have to internalize this idea. You have to internalize the idea of Kedusha. You don't just talk about, oh, this is what Kedusha is, and that's a theory, and you have to bring it into Lamaisa. You have to bring it into practice. What's the nafkamina? Halacha Lamaisa. You have to make it part of yourself. You have to strive to bring the Kedusha into yourself. Make Kedusha as part of you. Okay? I think that this idea of making the Kedusha part of you putting it inside yourself is alluded to in the very expressions that we're using. Lashon HaKodesh, or Eretz HaKodesh, Eretz Yisrael, right? How's that? So somebody named Usher Cassell asked a question a few minutes ago. It said, what is the difference between Safa and Lashon? Okay, so we're going to discuss that. What is the difference between the word Safa and Lashon? Safa and Lashon. In Hebrew language, in spoken Hebrew, there's two words for language. There's a Safa, and what's your Sfat Aim, your mother language, mother tongue, your mother language. And then there's Lashon. Lashon is a tongue. What's the difference between a Safa and a Lashon? Safa is a lip. A lip. Lashon is a tongue. What's the difference between a Safa and a Lashon? Tongue and a lip. So if Dessler says that a Safa is an external feature of a person's face. It's on the outside. Everyone, I see your lip, you see my lip, everyone sees the lip. The lip is on the outside. The Lashon is on the inside. And when you pay lip service, it's min safa l'chutz. You're just doing it on the outside, but on the inside you have a different, ulterior motive. But when you talk about Lashon HaKodesh means you have to make the Kedusha like your tongue. Your tongue is inside you, so the Kedusha is supposed to be inside you. It's not Safat HaKodesh, which is just on the outside. It's Lashon HaKodesh. The tongue is on the inside, the Kedusha is on the inside. That's why we say Lashon HaKodesh, not Safat HaKodesh. That's what Rav Dessler says about the difference between Lashon HaKodesh and Lashon and Safa. I wanted to say that the same idea applies to Eretz Yisrael as well. Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh. In the Hebrew language, there's two words for land or for ground. Okay, there's Eretz and there's Adama. Adama. Eretz really penetrates deeper than Adama. Eretz goes, it's not just the top of the ground. Adama is the topsoil. It's that dirt right there on the top of the ground, the top, the top crust, where you walk, that's Adama. Underneath that is already beyond the Adama. But Eretz includes the top and it goes deeper down into the ground. I said a word about this once for the RCA, for Precious Kerach. I wrote about it in my weekly essay for Precious Kerach. Also, Eretz goes deeper than Adama. Adama is just the top. Eretz goes all the way down to the core. So Eretz HaKodesh, or Eretz Yisrael, means that you have to internalize the idea of Kodesh, internalize the idea of Kedusha. The Kedusha is not just on the surface. It's not just, at face value, there's Kedusha. No, it goes inside. It's the Eretz. It goes deeper inside. I wanted to say an idea once that the word Eretz is connected to the word Ratzon. And there's a theory. Yeah, the word Eretz is related to the word Ratzon. The word Ratzon as opposed to the word Chafetz, right, or Chafetz. There's two ways to want something in Lashon HaKodesh. You could want it, ani rotzeh et zeh, or ani chafetz et zeh. What's the difference between a Ratzon and a Chafetz? A Chafetz is a more immediate goal. It's a more tangible what you want. What I want right now. Right? That's what I want right now. It refers to an object, a chafetz, right? Chafetzim, chafetz chashud, right? A chafetz is an object. It's something you could touch, you could feel it. You have it here, you see it here right now. A ratzon is deeper than that. It goes to your very essence, your very core. It's like, what do I really want? Not what do I want right now? What do I think I want? Or it goes to what do I really want? Eretz is related to that. It goes, what's at the core of a person? What's in his core? What's he internalizing? What's in the inside? That's Ratzon. Adama is related to the word domeh, or dimyon, or dalad mem. It's an illusion. It's imagination. It's a similarity. It's not the real McCoy. It's similar, but it's not exactly. It's not quite the same thing. Adama is it's almost there, but the Ratzon, the Eretz, that's really who you are. That's who you're trying to be. That's the essence. That's the internalizing the idea. So that's what I think is the significance of the bond between Eretz Yisrael, Eretz HaKodesh, and Lashon HaKodesh. It's alluding to this idea of Kedusha. It's alluding to this idea that you have to internalize Kedusha and make Kedusha a part of yourself. And I think going back to Ben Yehuda, I think that, Eliezer Ben Yehuda, the father of modern Hebrew, I think he stumbled onto this secret bond. He was not a religious person. He was maybe even an anti-religious person. In my book, I talk about how I bring an article about how the Sephardi Bezdin in Yerushalayim put a cherem against him. They put shofars and the whole 9 yards, explaining the whole story. And Ben Yehuda was not a religious person, but he stumbled upon one of these eternal truths of the connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. The Satan Rebbe said about Ben Yehuda, the Satan Rebbe said this in 1957 drasha. Ben Yehuda died on Leil Shabbos with a pen in his hand. It seemed to be an unrepentant sinner. But even a person, they say even a broken clock is correct twice a day. Okay, people, Generation Z people don't understand what that means because they don't know what a clock is. But even a broken clock is right. So even a person like Ben Yehuda can latch on to this idea that there's a sacred connection, a sacred bond between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. There are people. There's rumors flying around that they say that no, actually Ben Yehuda did tshuva before he died. There's a famous story going around. I saw this in a biography on Rav Kook. It said that Ben Yehuda used to consult with Rav Kook every Friday. He would come to Rav Kook's yeshiva and talk to him about different things related to Lashon HaKodesh and Chazal, different things, and try to clarify things. And on the Friday that Ben Yehuda died that week, he came to Rav Kook, and after they finished the conversation, Rav Kook said to him, Mr. Ben Yehuda, maybe it's time for you to do tshuva. And Ben Yehuda apparently said, maybe. And then that night he died. Okay, so people want to say, oh, there's some sort of hirhuri tshuva. Maybe Ben Yehuda is a tzaddik, maybe not. I understand why somebody, I don't know if the story is true, if it's not true, but I understand why somebody would make up the story, because there's a sort of cognitive dissonance that, he's not religious, he's not a good person, and yet he was mechaven to one of these eternal truths, one of these deep Kabbalistic secrets about the connection between Eretz Yisrael and Lashon HaKodesh. In order to reconcile it, you have to come out and say that no, he was a good person. People can't live with this cognitive dissonance of like a bad guy or a person wasn't from or wasn't religious, was anti-religious, and coming up with this idea or being mechaven to this idea. They say similar stories about Shlomo Carlebach. I heard once a story from the son of Goldstein, Rabbi Goldstein from the diaspora yeshiva. So his son has a whole story about how Shlomo Carlebach did tshuva on the day that he died. I'm sure Rabbi Stein has what to say about this. But it's a similar idea that like people can't live with like his nigunim are all over the world, and he had such a good influence on people. And then there's also the dark side to it. You have to come up with a way of reconciling it. I don't know if it's true or if it's not true. There's this need to sort of reconcile it. But there's people who take it to the opposite extreme. They say, no, Ben Yehuda, he's Yemach Shemo. Let's say Yemach Shemo about Ben Yehuda. And I bring down in my book that Rabbi Chaim Zonenfeld did not agree with that. Somebody once said Yemach Shemo about Ben Yehuda in Rabbi Chaim Zonenfeld's presence, and he protested. He made a machlah. He said, no, there's some good that came from Ben Yehuda's efforts. We can't say Yemach Shemo about him. He's not 100% good, but he's not 100% evil either. Rabbi Chaim Zonenfeld apparently said, like, halavai that the old yishuv would have started speaking Lashon HaKodesh before the Tzionim started doing it. That it would have been a great thing. And then something would be amiss if we didn't mention, the opposing opinion of the Maril Diskin. There's an opposing opinion that says that because we're in Golus, we don't have a Beit HaMikdash. We don't really have Eretz Yisrael, right? We don't really. We sort of have Eretz Yisrael, but we don't really have Eretz Yisrael. On Tisha B'Av, we still say Yerushalayim, Shemema v'Achareva. We're still in a state of Golus. Maybe we're not supposed to be speaking Lashon HaKodesh. Maybe Lashon HaKodesh is only for the time of the Geula. There's a pasuk in Tzefania where Tzefania, the Novi Tzefania says, "Ki oz afach el amim safa berura kulam b'shem Hashem la'avdei." Then, in Ma'aseh Mashiach, I'm gonna transform all the nations into a safa berura, into a clear safa, into a clear language, so that everyone's gonna call it in the name of Hashem. La'avdei shchem echad. Everyone's gonna equally worship Hashem and serve Hashem in the same way. The Novi Tzefania has such a nevuah, and the term safa berura in Gematria is b'lashon HaKodesh. So, Tzefania is saying that in the future, everyone is going to speak Lashon HaKodesh, not just Klal Yisrael. The whole world is going to speak Lashon HaKodesh. So Maharil Diskin and others would tell us that no, when you're in a state of Golus, you don't have Eretz Yisrael, you don't have a Geula, so you're not supposed to have Lashon HaKodesh. You're supposed to not be in a state of Lashon HaKodesh yet. We're waiting for Tzefania. As is Hashem, we're waiting to see the fulfillment of Tzefania's prophecy, the arrival of Mashiach. But as is Hashem, may it come speedily and in our days. Amen. I just sent in the chat. I sent 2 links to my 2 books. My first book is on the history of Lashon HaKodesh, and the second one is on God versus God. It talks about the history of Avodah Zarah throughout Tanakh. And it has an encyclopedia of Avodah Zarah that come up in Tanakh. If you're interested in my books on Amazon, you can access it from those 2 links that I just sent, or you can get in contact with me. I'm pretty easily accessible. Let me just look at some of the questions. Rabbi Asher Kassel mentions the Maral. There's a lot to talk about. The Maral has a lot about Lashon HaKodesh and Aramaic and the dialogue and the dialectic between Lashon HaKodesh and Aramaic. There's a lot to say about that, and I actually have a whole appendix about that in my book. I really can't get into that. Somebody else is asking, is Lashon HaKodesh biblical Hebrew? And what we speak Sfat Ivrit, that's really a whole topic to discuss. I'm sorry, Mr. Cranton, that I can't really get into it right now. But thank you very much for coming and for staying. And I apologize for going over time, but when you invite a rabbi to speak, that's how it goes. He always goes over time. So, you want to open up the floor, or?
Thank you.
Any comments?
Yeah, it was very interesting. Thank you very much. Really meant something. Very good.
Thank you much. Good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I enjoy your
Thank you, Shukar.
I enjoy your sheet every week as well. It's excellent.
Oh yes, I read a weekly column about synonyms in Lashon HaKodesh. Rabbi Shloime
really
is
good.
also a big fan of mine. That's how he invited me to come to this event over here.
Thank you.
Okay, Be'ezus Hashem, your father's neshama should have an aliyah.